E aku nui e aku rahi. Kia ora tātou. Nau mai ki a tātou, ki a koutou katoa, he mihi nui me te mihi whakawhetai ki tō mātou kōrero, rangatira a Frae Cairns, ne. Kia ora. Ko wai au, e tupu ake au te rito ka karapotia e nā awhi rito whāngai, hei whakamarumaru, ko Ngāpuhi, Ngāi Tūhoi me Ngāti Porou hoki, nā iwi eru nei taku nākau. Ko te ingoa whānau whāngai, ko Wilson Rawa, ko Whiu Wharero me Waiti. Ai. He honore ahau e tū wake nei ki te whakapapa tūturu, ko Ngāti Tamatera, Ngāti Maru, Ngāti Hako, Ngāti Raukawa, Ngāti Haua, Ngāti Porou. Nō reira, ko au te moko puna o ngā hau e whāne. Ko Eliacha tēnei, pēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa. Over to the person who this session is all about, that's going to take us through her amazing Mātauranga. Frae, welcome. Nau mai, hara mai, welcome to the kōrero today. Where are you from? Ko wai o, introduce yourself, your amazingness.
Kia ora koutou. Ngā mihi nui au. Thank you for your lovely welcome. Ko wai o, ko Ngāti Kahu me te au pauri nā iwi, ko Frae Cairns aho. I whakapapa to the Naughty North, as I like to call it.
Hey.
I grew up in a small town called Kaikohe, and whakapapa further north to Karaponia and to Te Kao, but I now live here in the beautiful Tāmaki Makaurau, and it is certainly turning on the sunshine today after we've just had a long weekend filled with rain. So, standard. Really excited to be here. I'm one of the two directors of Puna Awarau. We're 100% wahine Māori-owned consultancy firm, and we specialise in supporting organisations through their social procurement journeys, and more specifically looking at how they support Māori-owned businesses in their supply chains. So really excited for the kōrero today.
Pai, as are we. Just on the Kaikohe bus, because mum's from Kaikohe, from Kaikohe. Which part?
So my grandparents used to own Toy World in Kaikohe. So I grew up on Broadway in Kaikohe. And went to Pakihi Primary until we moved down here because my nana was my teacher and mum decided I was getting favourable treatment. So we had to leave once mum realised I wasn't really getting the learning experience I needed.
Paiana. I love it. I love hearing where you're from. We've got to connect on that later. So all good. Let's get into it because we've got a short amount of time there and we really want to use and listen to you and also ensure that we've got some other voices coming through as well. So we're going to start off with a very simple part. What is procurement? Summarise.
I always used to say I was a fancy buyer, that I was like a shopper. Because when you think about procurement's all about buying goods, works, and services. It is trying to find the right products or services at the right price, at the right time, and understanding how you get best value out of that. So for large organizations, it's often about things that support the organization. So procuring things like stationery or office supplies, catering, or in other senses, it's things like building a new building for an organization. So the construction activity, or in our case today, it's all about how either IT solutions can support or IT services and what that can look like. And so procurement is all about the buying of those services or goods. And it's often done through a tender or what you often get asked for a quote or a proposal, and procurement assesses what best value looks like for that organization and engages you through a contract to deliver those goods or services. So it's kind of a really complicated and robust thing because it has to be all audit processes and it's transformed over time. But in the really basic terms, it's actually just making sure you can do what the buyer needs at the right time, at the right place, for the right price.
Aira. I think, you know, thinking about procurement, thinking about the tender process, what is it that we should be putting in our contracts to protect us? So we'll start with that protection whakaaro first.
Yeah. And I think that's a really great kind of place to start because particularly when you're tendering for work or you're putting in a proposal for work, oftentimes you'll be given a proposal document to respond to. And as part of that, you should actually be given a draft contract. So you should be able to see what the contract looks like from the get-go before you even put in a bid, before you even say, you know, what you're going to be engaging with them for. So you should be able to have a look at that contract to see what that buyer wants from you and is going to ask you to agree to. I've seen my mate Junior just pop up and say he's here from Ministry of Education. They have standard contracts. So they would give you a standard contract as part of a tender that you can look at and you can see their standard terms and conditions. The good thing to think about when you're looking at reviewing those is making sure that there are terms and conditions that are also going to protect you. So often, particularly when we talk about IT services, there's a need to think about things like IP. So say you're building an app for the Ministry of Education, you need to look at who's owning that IP that you're developing for them. What is going to happen in that case? Because oftentimes it'll say that they own it and you have no rights to it. So making sure that actually is that going to be the case? Are you wanting to make sure there's shared ownership? Are you wanting to have the right to use it? Whatever that may look like, that's a really big thing. You need to be thinking about insurances. You know, if you're providing advice, if you're providing some kind of technical advice to them, do you have insurance to protect yourself? That's really important. Making sure that you have professional indemnity insurance. They'll often ask for it and have like a prerequisite around you have to have a minimum level. So understanding some of these standard things that are going to be in their contracts is really important up front so that you can be prepared before you actually get into the contract negotiations. You can also ask that your proposal makes up part of the contract. It's often a schedule to the contract, but you could actually stipulate you want it as part of the contract because then you're saying the services I'm going to provide are the services I said I'd provide in my proposal to you. They're the things that I've said I'll do, so that you know for sure that's what it is that you're going to be providing. And then it's a case of trying to check some of the basic things. You know, are the timeframes, when you want to be delivering this goods or works, is this when you are available to do this? Does that fit? Are they reasonable timeframes? Are they asking you to do things in too short a time frame that's just not possible? Making sure that that fits within what you're doing. But the really big thing when it comes to contracts is always get independent legal advice. I am not a lawyer. I'm a procurement professional, and I can't provide you with legal advice, but there are a lot of Māori businesses now who are providing specialist support, legal firms that can actually be engaged to support you around your contracts. So if you're engaging on someone else's terms and conditions, if you're engaging on one of these big organizations' terms and conditions, you need to make sure you're getting those reviewed so that you actually know that you're being protected throughout the process, as well as the buying organization.
Aye. There's some awesome Māori lawyers, especially in this legal advice, especially in this particular area that a few of us use, and they've just been amazing. I do want to just pick, you had a kōrero right at the beginning of this particular part, so you mentioned IP, and I know that a lot of us are going through this, especially if we have our own consultancies or we have our own businesses and we're imparting that IP as we move. So just on IP, are there some simple clauses that we are privy to that we can utilize, that we can grab and pull into our tender paperwork? Is there anything that you possibly after this could share with our rōpū, with our hapori in regards to clauses?
Not specific clauses, because lots of the stuff is like specific depending on whether you're providing like a service or whether you're providing a good, whether you're developing something like an app or whether you've got something that already exists. So IP can be quite a careful thing depending on how that works. But there are probably some standard things that we could think about as a hapori. Maybe we could have a couple of different things that could go into bids, like saying, actually, we would be looking to own this IP, or we would be sharing this IP, or we've already developed this, so we solely own this IP and we would give you right to use, or whatever that may look like. But it can be stipulated in your tender or in your proposal. You can tell the buying organisation up front what you expect in terms of that IP before you even get to the contract part, just telling them up front. And then you don't have to put it in legalese. It can actually just be a real simple statement of like saying, we've developed all of this IP, we own it.
I think I asked that question because back in my infrastructure days, when we were having a kōrero and doing advisement with our tradies, for example, we did have some simple clauses, and they would just utilize them as foundationary material to customize whatever requirement. At least they had something that they could put in to the tenders and bids. So something I think we might think about to help support, to help tautoko our whānau as they move in these spaces.
Yeah, we could definitely have something for inside of bids or proposals, not so much the contract space, because again, it's going to depend on the contract type that they're being engaged on and how that's formed. But definitely, yeah, we could have some statements for inside of proposals. That's an easy win.
Awesome. Okay, Witsi, I've got a few things here. I'm loving it, but I just want to keep us moving because I realize our time. In regards to the industry standard, what are industry standards for payment?
Yeah, this is a good one. So this is the thing with most large organizations. They have payment terms that say that they will pay you 20th of the month following. So if you're delivering goods or services to them and you were to invoice them today on the 30th of January, you'll get paid on the 20th of February. So that's always a good thing to check. It'll again be in the contract under payment terms. It'll tell you when you're going to get paid. However, what most people don't know is you don't actually have to always accept payment terms. You can, again, in that proposal phase, negotiate around payment terms. So you could say, actually, we would prefer to have 7-day payment terms on, receipt of invoice, or we would like to look at a lump sum payment. How could we be paid, 20% up front and the rest upon delivery, or we want to do installment payments. These are things that actually you can work with the procurer around changing those payment terms. And that's all about just understanding that actually they do have standard payment terms. Standard payment terms are generally 20th of the month following. But again, you can look to negotiate those. They don't have to be accepted.
I think that's really important, especially for these ones that sneak in the old 60 to 90-day terms, and you're going, hang on a second, I still got to pay my people, I've got to still pay my mortgage and everything else. So really important to have an eye on that. What can pakihi Māori do to increase their new contract opportunities?
Yeah, I think this is a really good one, and especially for this hapori, is that, there is a mix of business owners and professionals inside of organizations who make up this hapori. So even having that connection space before opportunities arise. So being able to tell others what your business does, who you are, what opportunities you're looking for, and being able to connect through networks like this is really, really important. But that means you need to have your, elevator pitch down pat. You need to be able to tell someone really easily in 30 seconds about your business and about your values, because you don't want to work with an organization who isn't aligned to what you're trying to achieve. So just making sure you can get that across really easily is a big thing. And being able to, connect with people. LinkedIn. As procurement professionals, love LinkedIn. It's our jam. They all like to have a little chat about all their projects, show off what they're up to. It's a really great way to connect. So being able to seek out whether it's IT project managers, whether it's looking at who's the IT procurement manager inside of different organizations you're trying to target, adding them on LinkedIn, sending them a little one pager about your business, that opportunity to connect before there is work is massive in being able to put you in the front of mind for some of these organizations, because oftentimes things will happen quickly, especially, a lower value contract, and they'll go to who they know to ask them to provide a quote or a bid. And so just being on the radar is really important in that space.
Yeah. I love it. So I've got here that determining our value proposition is really important, knowing our value proposition, and then having the elevator pitch to be able to pitch it. Kei te pai tērā. Connect through networks and finding networks. We run quite a lot of workshops on ecosystem scanning. So scanning the ecosystem around you, scanning that wider ecosystem, because there might be people and players, as we all know, that are out there that we may not be connected to yet, and that will help us with that forecasting and planning strategically, especially in our rautaki, whakaaro, our strategic thought process in and around who's in our ecosystem, who we need to connect to, so we can start those connections nice and early. Love it, e hoa. Let's keep going. So what are the three tips? What are the three tips that you have for whānau to strengthen their tender? So what have you got, our tips for our hapori to strengthen their game?
It's going to sound really silly, but answer the questions you're being asked in a proposal. So if you're being asked to provide a proposal and they've sent you through their RFP questions, they will generally have a set of questions about things that they need to understand, your track record, your potentially your capability and capacity, understanding who your people are. Be specific and answer the question that's being asked, because oftentimes people think like every question is a sales pitch. Whilst yes, it is, sometimes it's actually just that you have to be able to meet a certain kind of requirement. So make sure whatever they're asking you that you can answer that first, and then add in your sales pitch if you've got room. But make sure you answer that question, because you're going to get evaluated or scored based on how you answer those questions. So being really careful about making sure that you're doing that. But I think the other thing to think about is, how do you add your little bit of pizzazz to those answers as well? So how do you show off at every chance you can that you are a Māori business? Because that actually is a point of difference. That is actually something that a lot of organizations are trying to meaningfully engage with more Māori businesses. So make sure you tell them, make sure you're putting that in there. And if you can, if there's anything about the extra things that your organization does, because oftentimes Māori businesses go above and beyond at every chance, whether that's for their staff and their people, whether that's for the person that they're providing services to, whether that's for their community, making sure you're putting those things in, because that's the added value that your business is bringing. That's something that other businesses aren't doing. They're just providing the right time and the right thing at the right price, and that's it. Whereas engaging with you, they're going to get these additional benefits. They're actually going to be, engaging a business that potentially is employing more Māori. They're engaging a business that's investing back into their community. So making sure that you find a way to tell them that as part of your bid is massive. And I think the other thing is make sure you find an opportunity to ask the buyer questions. So often as part of a tender process or a proposal process, there's a time where you can ask them questions. You can say up to a certain day, ask them questions about either the project that they're asking you to undertake or the piece of technology that they're asking you to supply. But make sure you get a chance to ask questions about it, because oftentimes that's your chance to see if they're the right fit for you too. because you don't want to be providing, services to an organization that perhaps isn't ready for your type of technology or doesn't value it. And so maybe there may be a chance to be misaligned on that space. But also organizations hate telling you what their budget is, but always ask, because every now and then they'll tell you. And it's really helpful to know if there is a budget assigned, because that can also tell you if it's the right alignment for you. You can also kind of game it as well by asking around whether it's considered a low value project, because low value also often has a threshold in lots of buying organizations. So being able to understand where that kind of fits might also help you understand the effort and energy you should be putting in, because tendering costs businesses money because it costs time. So every tender is costing you money because it's costing your time, and that time is precious and it has a dollar value associated. So making sure that you're valuing that and understanding whether it's worth you responding.
I agree. I think as a contractor and a consultant these days, I am less reticent to put in a 30-page tender anymore. Like, I remember, the amount of money that goes into all of that stuff was next level. I love your response. Sorry, go for it.
I was just going to say that's why that relationship piece is also really key, because there are lots of times where organizations don't have to run a tender process. They don't actually have to go out to open market for some of these projects. So being able to have those relationships where organizations already understand, hey, that business, that's their sweet spot. They're really good at this. I know that they've worked with organization A, B, and C. Let's go have a chat with them directly. And that's the best way to be able to provide services to organizations oftentimes, is just that direct connection, and them being looking to directly award contracts to you instead of having to go through a whole open tender phase.
And it's always a good thing with the proof is in the pudding, eh? So if you have that relationship with them, you've done the mahi with them before, they know they can deliver, they're all on. It's like, hey, man, we got a thing coming up. You're going to be down with that in 6 months? Yeah, I got you. I can do that. Choice as. So, that comes back to that relationship stuff. I love the kōrero you had about answer the questions you're being asked. I think to summarize that, I wrote, they know their ask, so know your answer. And I think that's really important. They know you're us. So it's the same as us when we go out and we're, looking, he need to know what our ask is, so that we're looking for the right answer to come through. We're looking for that answer to help us achieve what we need to achieve. Awesome. Well, the kōrero is almost coming to an end, but one more question for you before we go to our pātai space. So what are common misconceptions, the myths, if you will, around tender documentation? Because there's a lot of myths out there. Myth bust, Frae, go.
I think particularly in this space, it's a little bit different, I think, in the IT services, because there are some really specific contract templates that exist, and most organizations share their templates around what they're going to ask you to engage on around, contracts. So they might be like, software as a solution templates, and there might be different things around looking at software as a service templates, and looking at whether you understand, I guess, what's in that space up front, because then they can't come back to you and say, oh, well, you have to sign this 4,000-page document. It's like, oh no, I've seen your 20-page contract. It's great. I'm comfortable with that. So just being armed with as much knowledge as you can prior to is really helpful, because there is this rhetoric around all procurement and all tender is 1,000 pages. It's all lots and lots of paperwork and it's really, really hard, when in actual fact, it doesn't have to be that difficult. It can be a lot simpler. So just as much as you can, do research beforehand, and be aware of the buying organization you're trying to engage with. What do they have that exists? I know that Junior had shared in the chat. I'm picking on you, Junior. Sorry, I always do. But they share theirs. So the ministry shares their templates online. Most of the government organizations do. Some of the bigger corporates will, so they will share theirs as well, because they have such standard terms and conditions. Then there's the big players like Microsoft and Google who won't let you negotiate a single thing and just say, here's our standard, accept. So yeah, just being aware of as much of that as you possibly can. But I think the biggest myth in the procurement space is that you always have to tender, or that you always have to get 3 quotes, or that you always have to test the market. But testing the market can look really different. And that's why I'm saying those direct connections are really important. The more IT managers who are looking to procure, the more IT procurement managers you can connect with before tender time is really, really massive, because there is an opportunity for them to be like, I've done a market scan and I can say that they are the only organization in this space, and so I'm going to engage with them. Or I know that there are others. However, they're the only Māori owned ones, so I'm going to approach them because we have a objective around engaging Māori businesses. Yes. There is often a reason for them to be able to do that. So that relationship piece is key, because I think a lot of people get scared of the tender space and understanding, what that looks like. And I think the other really big myth is that procurement people can't talk to you once they're in a procurement process. They'll often use it as an excuse and say, I can't talk to you because you might be bidding for this piece of work, and therefore we can't have a connection about it. And that's simply not true, in the sense of what they can't do is share any information with you about the tender and not share it with everyone else. But it doesn't mean that they can't take your call. Doesn't mean that you can't, ask them a question. They can always say, I can't actually answer that. That's okay. But they can actually still connect with you as a person. And that's a really big thing too. So just understanding how that works, but where possible, having those connections before opportunities, that's always going to be a win.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And another thing I was just thinking about as you were talking was really identifying the tone of the space in which you're tendering into. That's a little bit more of the EQ part of our Mātauranga and the way in which we move. But I think identifying the tone of the space will aid you in how you're putting that tender together. So really, really important kaupapa and whakaaro there as well. Really choice. It's half an hour is not long enough, Frae. I'm just going to say it right now because we can get into some some details in this space. I love the fact that you also said that in regards to being a Māori business and tendering in any space that you go to, it is our superpower. It is our superpower. So, being in it and dwelling within that and then managing to put that down on paper somehow, find that we're all poets, cuz. So, if you got that reo down and you're moving through it, find that poetry as well as not ensuring that it's not too fluffy. Do you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? So that you're landing the outcomes and their ask, you're answering. So e pai ana. Let's then open it up to our audience for pātai in the last 10 minutes. So a bit of a Q&A. Any of you have, I got one down here. Let's go. Ra, kia ora, bro. Are you seeing, Frae, a decrease in procurement opportunities based on that as well? Good pātai.
Yeah, I think that's Katie had put one above as well, just saying with the new government in place, what's your feeling for when the government procurement might be underway? Are you seeing any major changes for what they might be procuring? And I think that's Raz jumped on that as well. And I think this is a really interesting space. This new government is certainly I was going to try and find a positive reframe, and I'm really struggling. I think this weekend at Waitangi is going to be a really great weekend. Yeah. And I think that's the thing is they are looking to fundamentally try and change our world again, but I think this is the opportunity for us to see who are those organizations that are continuing on anyway. And I think this is the thing in government. There's plenty that ministers will try and inform and change, but there are also still champions inside of all of those buying organizations. There are still real people in there who are like, I don't care what you're saying. I'm going to continue to try and create impact with my procurement. I'm going to continue to do that. So there may be changes. There may be changes. For example, the government has a target around engaging Māori businesses as part of their spend. That may change if they have their way. That would be one of the things that we would expect to see some changes around, to be fair. We may see some changes around the rhetoric around broader outcomes, because they've had a focus around trying to create impact, around looking specifically at what that looks like for Māori and our Pacifica whanaunga as well. This is the thing that they potentially will try and undo some of that or shut it down. But again, those champions are all kind of saying, we'll continue on anyways. We can continue the good work that we've started. But what I think we are already seeing is that there are a lot of agencies who are looking to save money. They've had a clear direction that, budgets are out the wazoo. You need to find ways to save money, whether that's decreasing headcount, whether that's decreasing contract spend, whether that's both. They will be looking to save money, but that happens as this like kind of first term anyway. It's something that always happens. They always go, oh, we've got to save all this money, and then they go, oh no, we need to spend money again. So we've kind of seen that, there'll probably be lots of spending around infrastructure. So anyone who provides, IT in the space of construction, that work's going to continue. It might just look slightly different. It might be reprioritized. It might be on roading projects and not on public transport. There'll be like little things that will be very clearly, we're kind of seeing that direction. But they still have to spend money to keep the country going. So the opportunities are still going to exist. They might just be a little bit slower in this first half of the year, but I suspect that that'll pick back up again, especially once they have a better understanding of all their portfolios and how that looks. So I would still be trying to find every government buyer you can, because they always have money to spend. That's the reality of keeping a country going.
Right. We call this phase a cut in the infrastructure space, the cut and fill space. That's what they're doing. They're cutting and they'll fill back later. They don't know how they're going to fill back later, but right now they're cutting to be seen to be doing something. Paiana, let's just continue to move forward. From some of the spaces, especially our tech spaces, I'm noticing a change in the reo. So the outcomes remain the same. What people are trying to achieve within their value proposition, their unique value proposition for their companies, they stay the same. They've just changed the reo. So maybe they would have had, we focused on equity, we focused on sustainability. E paiana, they've just reversed the order. They've put economic development, growth, the digital trade economy all up there first, and then they've just reordered stuff. Heaha, the kaupapa remains the same. So this is us understanding the chessboard, and I hate this term, playing the game. I hate it, because that it also infirms that we're not playing straight up. I think we should always play straight up. That's about our integrity and our honesty. But it is a bit of a chessboard. So that's where I like to be, in the kitchen with the tea towel and a chessboard. So Pai, we've got a couple more partai down here for you. Good question. That's from Raymond too. Kia ora, bro. Do the government have to uphold the 5% Māori pakihi for procurement, or are you feeling that this will change? It's a good question.
Yeah, kia ora iho. Sorry, Ray, but it's not legislated, so it can be undone very easily, and it was always the problem with how it was put through. It's not a great way that whole target got put through, but unfortunately it can be very easily shot down. It has until, I can't remember if it's the financial year or the end of the year, because they always renew it when it launched, which was like I think October. So they'll see it through to the period, just because they've got government agencies all reporting on it and doing it, but it will potentially, I would suspect, be the thing that they will try and ditch. But yeah, it depends. Go have a chat to Tama at Waitangi. Let him know he's got to keep it there. His wife didn't work this hard for him to get rid of it.
Aira, oh, damn, girl. Hey, we saw them down at Huiamotu, and I was like, yeah, really cool chick, man. Anyway, move on.
Yeah,
hey,
last
question. She keeping him in order. God, just got to be saying, like, just anyway. Is it normal to require the full amount of money up front as part of it? Actually, this is a myth as well. So let's kōrero through this. Is it normal to require the full amount of money up front as part of a contract, or is it normal to have delivery dates?
Yeah, I think this is a really good one, and a good example again about understanding those kind of standard terms, and understanding sometimes where you might be getting a rogue operator, right? And this is something that we see, and actually the space that it's actually the most common is actually in the construction industry, where there's random little things where every now and then they'll say, you need to, you see it on Fair Go all the time, you need to pay me up front for your roof. Well, no, maybe I could pay part of materials. That could be, part of an assumption, or you could pay like an installment. But in terms of in the IT space, in terms of providing goods and services in this space, there is either payment terms based on delivery milestones. So it might be once you've delivered this part, you will be paid this part, and that breakdown. Or again, it's just the monthly billing. It's, you're going to get paid 20th of the month following. So being really wary of anything that asks for 100% upfront payment is massive. And being, careful, I think, around that. And also, where possible, if you're seeing that happen, get legal advice and get your own standard terms and conditions so you can ask others to engage on yours. So you're not having to constantly sign someone else's agreement. You can say, here's my terms and conditions. You're signing up to them. If you want to do work with us, here you go. So making sure you're protecting yourself and your business, because that's a surefire way for things to go wrong very quickly.
Oh, well summarized, Frae. How can people get a hold of you if they want to have a bit more of a detailed kōrero with you?
Yeah, ka pai. It's just Frae at punaawarau.com. Flick me an email. Find me on LinkedIn. Happy to have any messages on there. But yeah, Kahu and I are always happy to have a chat if you think we can be of help. Reach out anytime. I'll put my email in the chat so you have it as well.
Awesome. Here's her mobile address. Choices. Nā mihi ki a koe mō tau Mātauranga, tau wā, me tau pungao. Nau mai anō koe i ngā wā katoa. Really awesome to have you, Frae. Thank you so much for coming along and sharing your Mātauranga with us. So kia ora. Thank you very much. Any last words from you, beautiful lady?
I'll see you all at Waitangi. Come say hi.
Hey,
if you're there, let's get our activism on. Put your hikoi shoes on. I'm ready.
They on. I just take whatever shoes I'm wearing off and then they're on. So Choices, thank you so much for your time. And to everybody here listening now and listening later, kia ora mai tātou. It's been absolutely pleasure having this kōrero. Before you fellas go, just a few notices. Okay, so number one, the Matahiko nominations for the Matahiko Awards for 2024 are about to go out. Get your nominations on. Probably nominating all you fellas anyway, just saying. So please, we'd love to see you there. We'd love to see it, the Matahiko. It's bigger, better this year. It's going on. So please, we'll see you there. We also have coming up the Te Ao Matahiko Futures wānanga. We're utilising Te Kōrekoreka from Te Kuna Te Raki, the Futures, Māori Futures Framework, and that's going to help us with our aspirational whakaaro planning. So you as Māori in the digital technology sector as leaders, we'd love to see you down in Whanganui-a-Tara. That's on the 19th of February. Please go onto our website, that's matahiko.nz, for any more information on that. We also have so many other things coming up, but I could be here all day because, we're just getting stuff done. Other than that, been really, really choice seeing you all of you fellas, and I think we'll just settle our Māori before we move on, and have an awesome day. So kia pai tō rā. Whakamaua te kōrero, whakamaua te wānanga, whakamaua ki arangi nui e tui honei, whakamaua ki a papatua nuku e takutoa ki nei, whakatina ki te tumu o te māramatanga. Kia tīna. Haumi e, hui e.
Pakihi.
Ai, kia ora mai tātou. You're all
Kia ora. Ka ke kia popo mo tēnei wā.